Today I want to talk about indifference. I've just come across this in a book, a story. It's called the book is called The Cloister Walk, and it's the story of a woman living in a cloister with monks with the Christian liturgy for a year. It's a beautiful book. This last chapter that I read last night was about acacia or indifference or sloth, which is one of the cardinal sins. And one of the definitions from the early church fathers was that sloth is the refusal of joy. And I loved the way to put that. It really struck a chord with me. In my own life, I remember living in Cape Town in 2003, around that time when for a period of several months, life had lost all taste and all meaning. And I was constantly feeling flat and lifeless. The only way I was going to work was, because otherwise, what am I going to eat? And I'm going to lose my my rent if I don't earn money. And I suppose there was probably also a little bit of pride because I had immigrated from Germany to South Africa, so I wasn't going to admit defeat. But nevertheless, in that time, I worked in the day, and then at night, I medicated myself with wine and marijuana, and in the morning, I medicated myself with strong coffee and lots of nicotine. And you probably know, if you've ever had to struggle with depression, and so many of us have, this being caught in the endless repetition of hopeless and stuck thinking. And other than the dragging, I just didn't know how to get out of this physical and mental state of sloth. It feels like a quagmire internally of gray and cold and sucking and stinking and so uncomfortable. The early church fathers called this the noonday demon. And it's that inability to shift oneself out of the inactivity and indifference to life. I loved the intelligence and the wisdom in calling it a demon, because it gives voice to that feeling of being possessed by something beyond your control. Because if you're in that state, you're not in control. You can't just decide to move out of it. It takes a moment of grace. It takes a moment of an outward influence that is supporting to move us to higher ground. So this indifference in the form of sloth, as under the name of sloth, is one of the 7 cardinal sins that in Christian theology, they condemn the soul to eternal damnation. And when you're in the middle of it, that is exactly what it feels like. Eternal damnation. Forever turning in the same cycles of gray and lifeless thinking. Like that, we do condemn our soul. We condemn our psyche, the spirit of our life, to the feeling of eternal failure. And of course, nowadays we call this depression. And stuck in the middle of this, a part of us refuses to feel, seek, pursue, or believe in joy. And I see this in my clients. They are stuck in depression. They will argue fiercely against the possibility that their life circumstances could be interpreted in a more positive light. With an absolute air of finality, they will say, it's not possible. It won't work. This is simply not true. It's not like that. It's pointless. About other people, they'll say, they're just like that. They'll never change. I'm stuck. Yeah, stuck in that internal quagmire. This wasn't the only time I had this depression, but it's, for many of us, it is a coming and going, and it goes worse for a long time, and then maybe it's just a little bit. So over the years, I have become familiar with this noonday demon, and now it doesn't frighten me anymore because it is a part of myself, and just like all parts of myself, it adds a color, gray, and it adds an experience, cold, stinky, sodden, low. It adds those to the complex and intriguing totality of being human. And I am grateful for every facet of who I am. So they all intermingle and they all influence each other. So when I sit down and have tea with the noonday demon, it keeps me humble. It keeps me compassionate and understanding, and it keeps me in the practice of loving myself, of loving all parts of myself. I would say in spiritual terms, the two main components to breaking out to this awful indifference are grace and diligence. My grace at the time was Cape Town, which is a city of mountain and ocean. So the ability to be out, to be walking on the beach or walking on the mountain, that added a measure of sanity for each day, for every day that I chose to be out there. And I have always had a strong connection to that spiritual presence in creation, and being out in nature like that really soothed my spirit. This ability to accept grace fully, that comes with an understanding that grace is given freely if you but look for it. And also that it cannot be forced and it cannot be controlled. And over the years, the other component to becoming comfortable with this part of myself has been diligence. It was learning the practice of appreciation of beauty and nature and of people and practicing it. Learning to become aware of my mind instead of being controlled by it. Learning to cultivate the role of the observer along with all the other roles in my life. Cultivating the observer in meditation and inquiry. And understanding the noonday demon as just one of my inner parts, able to take over my thinking, absolutely, but also workable and with diligence, transformable into the gifts of wisdom and humility. What is your experience with the noonday demon? So many of us are struggling or have struggled with depression at some time. Do you have strategies to accept joy again? Share it in the comments.